Supreme Commander of the Forgotten Front. In the spring of 1942, in Australia, Douglas MacArthur was honored with the grand title of Supreme Commander of the Southwest Pacific Area, SWPA. Yet, behind that glittering designation lay a bitter reality. Washington and London had agreed upon a Europe-first strategy. The finest resources, tanks, aircraft, and elite divisions, were all being funneled to General Eisenhower to defeat Hitler. To make matters worse, the Pacific theater was split in two. The vast majority of the Navy's fleet and the elite Marine Corps were handed over to Admiral Chester Nimitz. The demigod, MacArthur, was now stuck in the southern hemisphere with nothing but scraps, battered remnants of American forces, newly recruited Australian militia, and a severe shortage of landing crafts. For a man with an ego as colossal as MacArthur's, this marginalization was a profound insult. But instead of wallowing in self-pity, he resolved to use these meager resources to forge a war machine that would crush the Japanese in his own unique way. Island hopping, the gambit of a genius. The Japanese Empire had transformed hundreds of Pacific islands into heavily fortified steel bastions, garrisoned by tens of thousands of troops and protected by impenetrable underground tunnel networks, such as the massive base at Rabaul. If the Allied forces launched frontal assaults on every single island, they would bleed to death long before they ever saw the shores of the Philippines. In this moment of strategic deadlock, MacArthur's brilliant military mind conceived a tactic that would alter the entire course of World War II: the island hopping, or leapfrogging, strategy. In truth, it was a move of both sheer ruthlessness and supreme arrogance. Rather than throwing his men into a meat grinder against impregnable fortresses, MacArthur ordered his forces to simply ignore them. He used his Air Force and Navy to blockade the strongholds, completely severing Japanese supply lines. Then, his forces would leapfrog over those fortresses, storming a weaker, less defended island behind enemy lines, building new airstrips, and continuing the advance. Let them wither on the vine, MacArthur famously declared. The strategy was flawlessly effective. Tens of thousands of elite Japanese soldiers were left starving on isolated islands, stripped of ammunition and rations, transforming into harmless ghosts hiding in caves. MacArthur bypassed them entirely, neutralizing massive enemy garrisons without having to fire a single rifle shot. Blood, mud, and the green hell of New Guinea. But before he could hop any further, MacArthur had to hold the final defensive line, New Guinea. The battles here did not take place on the neat, open fields of Europe, but within a primeval, green hell. American and Australian soldiers fought in dense, suffocating rainforests, wading through waist-deep mud, battling leeches, ticks, and venomous snakes. Malaria and dysentery claimed as many lives as Japanese snipers. During the brutal campaigns of Papua, Buna Gona, Leyte, and Hollandia, MacArthur's ruthlessness resurfaced. Sitting in his secure headquarters in Brisbane, he demanded that his subordinates advance at all costs. History still remembers the chilling order he gave to Lieutenant General Robert Eichelberger when the Buna front stalled. "Bob, I want you to take Buna, or not come back alive." Paid for with a heavy toll of blood and exhaustion, the joint U.S.-Australian forces broke the back of the Japanese army in New Guinea. Simultaneously, MacArthur protected the Navy's flank in the Solomon Islands campaign and delivered decisive blows to the Admiralty Islands, tightening the noose around the Japanese in the Southwest Pacific. MacArthur's war machine carved through the Pacific map faster, further, and with fewer casualties than any other commander in the war. October 1944, the beaches of Leyte and the oath fulfilled. By the autumn of 1944, the American behemoth known as the Seventh Fleet had closed in on the Philippine coast. At this juncture, the top brass in Washington proposed bypassing the Philippines entirely to strike directly at Formosa, Taiwan. But the four-star general vehemently refused. For MacArthur, the Philippines was not just a strategic objective, it was a matter of honor, of blood, and a debt that had to be paid. He threatened to resign his commission if President Roosevelt did not allow him to liberate the island nation. Ultimately, Roosevelt conceded. On October 20, 1944, the skies over the island of Leyte, Philippines, shook from a massive pre-invasion naval bombardment by American battleships. MacArthur did not wait for the beach to be fully secured, choosing the exact moment when artillery shells were still echoing in the distance. He dressed in a perfectly starched uniform, donned his gold-braided cap, slipped on his legendary Ray-Ban aviator sunglasses, and stepped off the landing craft. As the ramp dropped into the shallows, MacArthur took long, deliberate strides, wading knee-deep through the surf to step onto the shores of Leyte. Army photographers captured the moment, producing one of the most iconic and perfectly staged photographs in the history of war journalism. He strode up to a mobile radio unit hastily set up on the beach. Standing in the drizzling rain, his voice trembling with overwhelming emotion and supreme pride, MacArthur took the microphone. His words rode the radio waves, echoing through the dense jungles of the Philippines where guerrilla fighters wept with joy. People of the Philippines, I have returned. By the grace of Almighty God, our forces stand again on Philippine soil. Rally to me, let the indomitable spirit of Bataan and Corregidor lead on, as the lines of battle roll forward to bring you within the zone of operations. Rise and strike at every favorable opportunity, for your homes and hearths. Strike, for future generations of your sons and daughters. Strike, in the name of your sacred dead. Strike. After 2.5 years and thousands of miles of blood-soaked ocean, the demigod had returned to reclaim his throne. The battle to liberate the Philippines would become a brutal slaughterhouse. But in that singular moment on the beach of Leyte, Douglas MacArthur proved a historical truth. When a man with the biggest ego in the world swears an oath to return, not even the entire Japanese Empire can stop him.